Hey friends, been reading a little bit about parks in cities this morning, and thanks to Reading's own Sue Lang, have also gotten to watch a couple of documentaries that are really focused on parks and urban spaces, and specifically one amazing landscape architect, Frederick Law Olmsted. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about what I'm learning and what I've come across during the course of this, just in the last few days. So first I got to watch this documentary, Olmsted and America's Urban Parks. Olmsted, if you've ever seen him, he's the one who did Central Park and many, many others. People say that he was one of the inventors of landscape architecture. And so to start, one of the things that struck me is that in his childhood, he actually grew up in a series of boarding houses. And so historians who study him say that nature became one of the constants that Olmsted could turn to throughout his tumultuous childhood. Nature, obviously, including in urban spaces, was really important. The other documentary that Sue gave me that I just finished, and I recommend both of these. This is Designing America. You can actually get this online as well. They describe the process of laying out Central Park, and one of the things that struck me about this is the degree of long-term planning that's really required when you think about landscape architecture in a park that's in an urban area. So they describe how in laying out Central Park, Olmsted says, we determined to think of no results to be realized in less than 40 years. So, I think right now I'm 36. So imagine, I'm 76 in 40 years, or, take your age and think about that 40 years in the future. Really is the epitome of long-term thinking to imagine a park space in an urban area. Another quote from that documentary that was so striking is, describing how with Central Park or any of the other parks that Olmsted designed, they say that this isn't a piece of natural landscape that someone has put a fence around. It's just the opposite. It's a stage set where the actors play many parts. It's really part of the theater of life. So I love these two documentaries. I want to thank Sue for suggesting them to me. I'm curious if any of you, I see Deborah and Jason, Christina, Hillary, Javier, Jarrett, Brandy, Robin, if there are any parks that you've been to or plazas, open spaces in cities, I would love to hear some of your favorites. The last thing I just want to share, this is from a book that Emily Applekamp gave me years ago now. Lent to me years ago now. Some of you know my penchant for keeping things for a long time, but I promise, Emily, I put a Post-it note with your name in here so that I would remember it's yours. This is Jane Jacobs' The Death and Life of Great American Cities. I think it was written in 60 or 61, something like that. So it's had its tours of duty. But in it, Jane Jacobs, who's an urbanist, describes, she has a range of topics that she tackles here. So just to give you a sense, here there are several chapters that are just about sidewalks and the importance of sidewalks in urban spaces. And she also has a chapter that's on the uses of neighborhood parks. And she calls out something just in the opening that I think is really relevant to our experience in Reading. So she says, parks are volatile places. They tend to run the extremes of popularity and unpopularity. Their behavior is far from simple. They can be delightful features of city districts and economic assets to their surroundings as well, but pitifully few are. They can grow more beloved and valuable with the years, but pitifully few show this staying power. For every Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia, or Rockefeller Plaza, or Washington Square in New York, or Boston Commons, or their loved equivalents in other cities, there are dozens of dispirited city vacuums called parks, eaten around with decay, little used, unloved. And I think we see this, in many cities. Our city is not alone in this. But she has this section that I just want to close by sharing, where she describes the range of uses that people make for parks. And just again, for anybody who's just joining, this is The Death and Life of Great American Cities by Jane Jacobs. So here's the last piece that I just love when I try to think about what happens in parks and urban spaces. So she says, even the same person comes to a park for different reasons at different times. Some to sit tiredly, sometimes to play or to watch a game, sometimes to read or work, sometimes to show off, sometimes to fall in love, sometimes to keep an appointment, sometimes to savor the hustle of the city from a retreat, sometimes in the hope of finding acquaintances, sometimes to get a bit closer, to a bit of nature, sometimes to keep a child occupied, I can relate to that one, sometimes simply to see what offers, and almost always to be entertained by the sight of other people. So that's just a little bit about what I've been exploring around parks recently. I want to say thank you to Sue and to Emily for loaning these materials to me. And just a reminder, so it's Olmsted, can't get it straight. Olmsted and American Urban Parks. That's a public television production. You can get it online as well. And then Frederick Law Olmsted, Designing America. And this one, which is just a classic, acerbic in parts, delightful in other parts. I know some of you know Jane Jacobs, The Death and Life of Great American Cities. So if you have any, hey Barbara, hey Eric and Ten. Oh, we have wonderful people from all over on this. So if you have a favorite park somewhere in the world, a favorite plaza or open space, I would love to hear what you appreciate about that space and what works that really makes it a compelling space for you, and anything that you've learned about that. So thank you in advance for sharing any of your thoughts about that. And it's great just to see you all, friends. Take care.